Hello, my dears. Listen me carefully today. I share with you the untold WW2 real story that shock you. On the 19th of January 1942, Shalama Bera, a Polish Jew, arrived in the heavily guarded Warsaw Ghetto. He had managed to escape the Helmo extermination camp, one of the 6 major Nazi death camps. He told his story to Emanuel Ringelblum, a Jewish historian who made it the goal of his life to leave evidence of the Nazi crime unfolding against his community. Ringelblum and his team managed to collect almost 35,000 pages of documentation, essays, diaries and posters from the ghetto with horrific stories like the one told by Bioria, but for some their dedication to collecting such evidence under the harshest conditions means nothing. Today, in a day in history, we talk about Holocaust denial, the incredible effort to deny one of the most well-documented and carefully proven dark events in the history of mankind. The Holocaust denial is a conspiracy theory that started right after the end of World War II and was gradually canonized with a set of arguments. The theory rose significantly alongside the rise of Holocaust, his geography in general, after the 1970s and 1980s. There are 2 main currents of Holocaust denial theories. The first claims that the Holocaust never happened and is just a Jewish lie. The second is more subtle and uncompromising, and maybe for this reason more dangerous. It does not deny the event as such, but diminishes its extent either by questioning the number of victims or making similar supposedly scrutinizing claims. In what follows, we will discuss 6 Holocaust denial theories and check their validity. We will start with the first category, arguments that deny that the Holocaust happened at all. Let's start with the basics. This argument is often used as a general statement and is supported by the other arguments that we will discuss later. It employs classical conspiratorial logic, making a seemingly truth-like statement that cannot be disputed because it is self-covering. Whatever evidence one provides to prove the Holocaust, the denier can dismiss. It is part of the myth. However, it is not hard to contextualize this argument within the history of European anti-Semitism. Blaming Jews for conspiring against the supposed world order has been a tactic for centuries, initially within a religious Christian context, and later politicized in the notorious case of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the protocols which have been proven to be fabricated, though a Holocaust denier will hardly accept that purportedly revealed a Jewish conspiracy for world domination. They were used extensively in Russia, where they originated to justify anti-Jewish pilgrims, and in Nazi Germany as propaganda against the Jews. The claim that Jews fabricated the Holocaust to achieve a higher goal fits well into this tradition and is a classic case of anti-Semitic discourse. It also does not take into account the fact that apart from the 6 million Jews, there were around 5 more million people, including Roma and Sinti, mentally disabled, homosexuals, communists, and slaves were similarly murdered by the Nazis. More interesting is the claim that the Allies fabricated the Holocaust to morally annihilate their enemies and appear as world saviors, hiding their own crimes behind the supposedly terrible Nazis. While it is true that victors usually write history and create narratives that favor themselves, the evidence of the Holocaust surfaced so quickly and was so overwhelming that it is extremely doubtful anyone could have orchestrated such a massive historical fabrication. This argument implies that while fighting a world war on several fronts with millions of people and incalculable logistics, the Allies had a separate operation fabricating videos, photos and testimonies, finding and paying actors to simulate deep trauma as supposed victims and perpetrators, and were ready to present all this fake evidence in an international trial in Germany just 6 months after the country's surrender and 3 months after the war ended, and nobody said anything. However, our denier insists that there is no evidence that gas chambers existed, implying it all might be a lie. This statement is not only confusing but also significantly misleading, if not outright malicious. It hinges on a grim reality. There were no survivors to describe the gassing process. This is a tautology, not a valid argument. It's akin to claiming that death doesn't exist because no deceased person has ever told us they died. There are thousands of testimonies from survivors that confirm the existence of procedures during which camp inmates were summoned and led to places from which they never returned, and we also know much more about not only the procedure but also about its evolution. The use of gas for mass executions began in 1939 as part of T4, targeting the mentally disabled, and then extended to the killing of Jews using gas fans, a form of mobile gas chamber. This practice is very well documented. Later in August 1942, SS officer Kurt Gerzin, responsible for distributing Zion B-2ites, directly witnessed executions using diesel exhaust fumes in the Belek and Trinka extermination camps, which he reported Finally, we have witnesses from inside the camps. In 1944, the verbal Wetzler report revealed detailed information about the gas chambers and their functions based on accounts from a member of the Sauerkommando who collected corpses from inside the chambers. If these testimonies are not enough, forensic examinations of the remaining gas chamber sites have detected cyanide compounds on the walls, further confirming their use for mass execution. Ironically, the Nazis did not even need gas chambers to kill before 1941. The method of mass execution was hunting and killing with guns, leading to massacres like the one committed in Babar in September 1941, where 40,000 Jews were executed in cold blood. This method of execution, however, proved to be too costly in ammunition, bad for the psychology and the morale of the army, and time-consuming. Therefore, gassing was preferred. But even denying the existence of gas chambers does not in any way deny the Holocaust. Despite the Holocaust deniers' hopes, a very similar argument is used regarding crematoria. Holocaust deniers argue that the number of bodies that the Nazis claim to have incinerated far exceeds the capacity of the crater. This argument only sounds convincing because it implies that the person who states it has a certain technical knowledge that gives them authority to make such claims. Unfortunately for them, however, it is neither technically nor historically accurate. Exactly as in the case of the gas chambers, we have thousands of eyewitnesses who describe without contradiction how the crematoria looked like and how they worked, especially the eyewitness accounts of members of the Sauerkommando who were forced to work there, such as Philipp Müller, Schom-Venier and Mikosi, have revealed the efficiency but also the problems of the procedure in all concentration of camps. There were many rooms for burning dead bodies, and according to the SS officer Grick, in a report to Himmler in May 1943, the Eitzovens could burn up to 10,000 corpses a day. A more detailed account by SS officer Leiling, who estimated 4,756 bodies per day. Even if we can consider this smaller number, this still makes 735 N40 in 365 days, which exceeds the actual number of people killed there from 1941 to 1945, which has been around 1,100,000. There were periods when the crematoria could not burn all the corpses created in one day, even at full capacity, operating 24/7. Such was the case with the arrival of the Hungarian Jews at Abut-Wit in the summer of 1944, when around 500,000 Jews were deported to Eitz in a short period. The Nazis responded by burning corpses in open-air pits, creating a suffocating atmosphere witnessed by people living nearby. A famous clandestine photo taken from inside the camp during that period actually proves this practice. It is therefore an undisputed fact that burnings of corpses did take place in a shockingly efficient manner in all extermination camps, and denying this is not only a denial of the proven sufferings of millions of victims, but also an underestimation of the grimly effective technical expertise employed by German engineers. This argument tries to undermine not the Holocaust as such, but its importance by questioning its scale. First of all, even if 1 million people died, which is 6 times fewer Jews and 11 times fewer people in general than the number we know is true, that would still make the Holocaust one of the most heinous examples of genocide ever happening. So the argument has little validity from the beginning, but it is also very easy to deconstruct. Deniers argue that the figure of 6 million Jewish victims is inflated. However, this number is based on extensive research, including Nazi records, demographic studies, and post-war investigations. The figure of 6 million is a conservative estimate, supported by the convergence, 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 of numerous independent sources. Nazi records meticulously documented the number of Jews in occupied territories and those deported to concentration camps. These records align with the demographic studies conducted before and after the war showing a significant decrease in the Jewish population. For example, there were 3.3 million Jews in Poland in 1939 and fewer than 300,000 in 1945, unlike German Jews who faced a program of forced migration and some time to plan their escape. Polish Jews were immediately subjected to harsh measures. They were forced into ghettos with the Warsaw and Woe ghettos, each containing over 200,000 Jews. These ghettos served as holding areas before Jews were systematically transported to concentration or extermination camps where the majority were murdered. The 800,000 Hungarian Jews also experienced the same fate in an even shorter period of a few months. Similar patterns of persecution, ghettoization and mass deportation occurred across Europe, where Jews from various countries were captured and sent to their deaths in a meticulously organized manner. Post-war investigations, including the Nuremberg trials, provided further evidence, e.g. eyewitness testimonies, confessions from Nazi officials, and detailed reports from liberating forces all corroborate the 6 million figure. Holocaust scholars and historians have consistently verified these numbers. Through independent research, disregarding this figure ignores the overwhelming evidence available and the rigorous methodologies employed in these studies. This is simply untrue. While Adolf Hitler did not issue a specific order explicitly mentioning the killing of Jews or other minorities, there are numerous instances of anti-Jewish hate speech and propaganda documented across various echelons of the Nazi regime. Additionally, the Nazis made an unusual oversight by failing to destroy one crucial document that reveals their plan to eliminate the Jewish population, the records of the Wannsee Conference there on the 20th of January 1942 in a dialer still stand in today. Several important Nazi officials, including Richard Hinrich, the right hand of Heinrich Himmler, and Adolf Eichen, met to discuss the final solution of the Jewish question. Heire reiterated his authority from Goering himself to coordinate a plan that could generalize the anti-Jewish policies practiced in Germany and the occupied territories to the whole of Europe. He stated that the forced expulsion of the Jews to the east as approved by Hitler was a temporary measure, and that the final plan would be to send them to labor camps where the
majority were expected to die. This perfectly describes what actually happened in the concentration and extermination camps right after the conference ended. The finale is even more terrifying. The remnant that eventually remains will require suitable treatment because it will, without a doubt, represent the most physically resistant part. It consists of a natural selection that could on its
release become the germ cell of a new Jewish revival. The genocidal intent is perfectly clear. The Jews that will survive the harsh labor will be the strongest ones, at least according to the Nazi ideology, and would have to be treated suitably, namely killed, because if released they would be able to revive their community. There is therefore no dispute as to the intentions of the Nazis, and where they came from. Honecker was already a high SS official, and his plan was authorized by his boss Himmler and Göring, numbers 2 and 3 in the Nazi hierarchy. It also was at least partially and most probably fully known to Hitler. For anyone who denies this, the records are still there in the villa where the murderous clique met to plan the extermination. This is another argument that claims to be based on some kind of scientific knowledge regarding victim psychology, but although it begins from the correct assumption that survivor testimonies may provide inaccurate information, it just fails to mention that there is a reason why we still want to listen to them, because it is proved that there is a significant core of truth in them, and the actual experts have methods to extract them even more. Importantly, experts can arrive at conclusions based on these accounts, while at the same time recognizing their unreliable aspects. Take, for example, an incident in a concentration camp that is analyzed by the prominent Holocaust historian Christopher Browning. The incident was described by 12 witnesses, who, however, all remember it slightly differently. The earliest two accounts come from 1945, describe a 12-year-old girl who attacked a guard and was therefore shot in the head. She faked death and was able to hide after that. Before surrendering, according to one witness, her life was spared, while the other makes no mention of what happened to her. Another account from 1946 tells the same story, but recalls the girl calling for a mass insurrection before attacking the guard, who then only shot in the air 2 years after that. Another witness described the same event, saying that a young woman named Luana attacked a guard and started calling for help, but then a guard shot her and left her after dead, but she managed to survive. Other testimonies from the 1960s tell the same story, but again differ in the details. Some of them, however, identified the victim as a girl called Guta Blas. Astonishingly, Guta Blas herself also gave testimony of the event and has provided at least 7 accounts of the event from 1967 to 204, which all differ from one another. But although this example shows that the witness accounts, even the ones coming from the same person in different years, are unreliable, the core of the story is the same in all of them. A girl attacked a guard and was shot, but survived. There are thousands of similar stories and accounts. Everyone is allowed and even encouraged to question their details, but to deny the core of truth in them, the truth that the Nazis were imprisoning and exterminating people just because they did not fit their ideology, is UN disputed. In fact, the overwhelming evidence of the crime that has been collected by witnesses make it one of the most reliable accounts of genocide that ever existed in human history.